Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. And today we're going to be talking about the volunteer flotilla that is part of the Bainbridge Prepares Readiness Project for Emergencies here on Bainbridge. I want to first, though, thank Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island, which is the sponsor of Something to Talk About. Fieldstone offers innovative and compassionate care, and they are now open on Rolling Bay. So you can get a tour of their lovely facility by calling 360-271-2530. And a welcome to Tami Allen, the Harbormaster with Bainbridge Island, and also the coordinator of the emergency flotilla. Hi, Tami.
Good morning. Happy to be here, Reed. And thank you for making this recording. We'll probably try to link it for training more boaters as they move to Bainbridge.
Great.
Again, Tami Allen. I'm the Harbormaster for the police department. I work for the city of Bainbridge Island. Been there a little over 20 years. I'm a captain as well as have a degree in Master of Public Administration. So this was a good fit to come to Bainbridge and help with the planning. Mainly I do harbor management around the island, but this morning I want to talk specifically about the flotilla. Because we're an island connected by bridge and ferry, in an emergency, we are truly an island. So we already have that little bit more awareness of being isolated from in an emergency. But I would argue that any small community that might be hearing this recording could quickly find themselves an island when roads are washed out. So if you think about other situations where, come on, let me get my PowerPoint to cooperate. There we go. There are many times where boaters have come to the aid of people in an emergency. This is no exception. After 9/11, they moved 500,000 pedestrians out of the shoreline through passenger ferries, commercial boats, emergency response vessels, but also private vessels. In situations where there are landslides and roads are washed out, getting a vessel into a shoreline makes a lot more sense than trying to climb out of something like you see here in the photo. We don't discriminate by the size of the vessel that helps in an emergency. This young gentleman rescued 100 people using one jet ski in the Bahamas. We like the vessels that can do lots of different jobs. This is an example of a vessel that could access, for the oil spill, but could access flooded areas, not a lot of draft, and able to get into tight areas. It's all about having local boats volunteering in their local community. This slide is actually, I was there. That's Loma Prieta back in '89, where roads were down all over the state and vessel traffic was the way to get people around. And earthquake is going to be a lot of my focus in why we're doing an emergency flotilla. But I would argue that you might need to move people if there's a wildfire and they can't have access upland. We saw this happen in Australia when they had to evacuate sections of the shoreline, and they did it by boat. We would need vessels to respond in event of a boat fire, but any type of fire. And that's actually our own police boat in that shot. We also have 53 miles of shoreline on this island, and half of it is exposed to the shipping lanes where a lot of product goes north and south on a daily basis. So we are staged at Bainbridge with spill containment boom, which is in the photo here. And just as we want everyone to learn CPR and how to use an AED, we want our boaters to, in our flotilla, be trained how to at least deliver the boom so the emergency workers can help prevent damage from an oil spill. So that's all our volunteers would do, is deploy clean boom in clean water as a preventative measure. But you think about how much shoreline we have for the island, how many vessels we have on the island, and some off island, and how much we depend on that bridge. When I talked to City of Polsbo staff, they said there could be 20,000 vehicles that cross that bridge that don't get on the ferry, which means we've absorbed them for that day. And after an earthquake, we need to help figure out how to get them home as well. So it's not just getting our residents home, it may be getting our visitors to their homes as well. So that's the whole idea of a flotilla, is no bridge, no ferry. What's plan B? We expect people to be able to shelter in place at work for the first couple days, and eventually we'll get them back to Bainbridge. So it's not 5 minutes after an earthquake, it's the next 2 months after an earthquake of getting resiliency in our community using vessels. So again, no bridge, no ferry, no road. Our first, I would imagine the first request I'm going to get from the city of Bainbridge Island and our emergency operations is half of our police department live in Kitsap, but not on Bainbridge. Can you help us get the next 12 hours of staffing? Half of our firefighters live in King County and Kitsap, but not on Bainbridge. You can expect housing prices to be part of that, but getting essential staff, firefighters, police officers, electricians, PSC employees, people that have equipment here, but they need to come and do important work. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Yep, that worked. And then you think about, so that's one tier. Then you think about all of the people that left that morning of the earthquake, and they're on day 2 or 3. They need to get home eventually. The kids may have sheltered at the school in Seattle. They need to get home eventually. So this is part of our family reunification. These are healthy people just wanting to get home, and they'll catch a boat on the Seattle side or the Kitsap side to get back to Bainbridge, a one-way trip. But you've seen the ferry unload on a busy August afternoon on Saturday. We have hundreds of thousands of walk-on visitors with maybe a cell phone and a water bottle, and they're not set up to spend 3 days. And we need to help figure out either how to get them back to a safe shelter or to shelter them until we can get them a ride home. And this is all based on not having consistent ferry service and having a damaged bridge. And then right through the whole program, we're going to be getting requests from our emergency operations. A perfect example was the last 48 hours where we had individual requests come into our EOC for people who were snowbound. Maybe they needed a doctor's appointment or just a ride across the ice-covered street to do their shopping. And we used volunteers called Big Wheels, and they drove their Subarus to someone's house and took them to the grocery store. We just did that. This is very similar using vessels. And it can be just as simple as what we did with Big Wheels last week. We do have an incredible police boat. This boat can travel day and night, can travel in big seas. It has radar, it has FLIR, the heat sensing videography. But we expect this vessel to be used for a much different use during an emergency. Whereas volunteer boaters like John and Lauren, those vessels are perfect for a non-law enforcement, semi-emergency response. Boats like this one, who just did a drill with us recently. It's got shelter. It's actually hanging our Bainbridge Island Flotilla flag. It's Bravo, India. Looks like that. The letter B and the letter I. This is a big one. So that if you were the person on the shoreline in Seattle, you had talked to a ham operator, you knew that a boat was coming from Bainbridge, you'd look for that Bravo, India flag, and you would coordinate with somebody in a dinghy to get you out to that boat to bring you back to Bainbridge. And this is another one of our volunteers, float plane. They were also part of our drill. Again, a vessel with a ham operator, big important piece there. They need to have ham and VHF radios to talk to our emergency response. a good dinghy, a good crew. So we're recruiting boat owners, we're recruiting the captains for those boats, and they just need their boater education card. They don't need a license like I have with the Coast Guard. They just need to have a seaworthy vessel boater education card. Ideally, they get their emergency credential through our emergency management director, and they train their crew so that they all have ID cards and they're ready to deploy. I can't emphasize enough that our local residents are the best ones to do this work. And boaters will absolutely help other boaters. It's the law of the sea. They will not leave a boater in distress. They never have. We're taking that one step further, saying that boaters will assist their neighbors and their vessel neighbors, but we can give them a little more by preparing them ahead of time, by having them part of our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, by covering liability for their vessel if they're part of our mission. So if they're a credentialed volunteer with our flotilla, we now give them a mission number, we communicate with them the exact needs that we have for that operational period, and now they're part of our response and they're part of our liability coverage, and we can even refuel these vessels. So those are two big reasons. There are two more. If they're bringing on vulnerable populations on their vessel, we want to be able to say this captain and all of her crew have had a background check. If I'm talking to the captain and I'm telling them to go pick up passengers off the beach, then I can tell that captain that she can be guaranteed that the people we're putting on her boat have been vetted. There's a reason that we're bringing them to Bainbridge or bringing them off Bainbridge, and that they're being, excuse me, vetted through our emergency management. If you imagine a full-scale event, that protects the passengers as well as the captains from things getting out of control. And I think if the passengers know that something's being planned and someone is talking to them and they have a ham radio, that will reduce the anxiety for everyone. So that's why we're trying to get our flotilla captains part of our system. But the other reason I want to do boats is because boats, just by being what they are, mobile, sheltered, they have communication, they have fuel, they have food, they have potable water, they have propulsion, they can recharge their systems. Boats are already the perfect mobile unit for shelter in place with communication after an earthquake. This boat happens to be on a buoy in Eagle Harbor. The captain, she has her ham license. Her husband has a fully electric solar generated system for propulsion, communication, and heat. So they are the perfect family to weather this earthquake and then to be able to help us in our resiliency afterwards, in our recovery. So where to start? We know about the Map Your Neighborhood program, and raise your hand if you've done your Map Your Neighborhood. I figured everybody would raise their hand. Come on, John. Yay. Okay.
Well, we'll be talking with them too to
good.
spread the word about how those of us on land can get organized as well.
Yeah, and that is exactly the link between the flotilla and the passenger that needs to get back to their family. It's going to happen through your neighborhood. So on our street, we have identified who on our street have boats in the water, boats on trailers, boats off island, who on our street has a ham radio, and all of those communications for family reunification. They don't need to, if they've worked that out at their barbecue in August of what they're going to do in January, then that captain of that vessel already knows who works off island, who lives on their street that's going to need help. They can start doing that kind of work at any point. And that is where a lot of that groundwork should be happening. You check on your neighbor, you check on your family, then you check on your neighbors, then you resolve your neighborhood, then you check in with your hub. At that point is when our captains are talking to the ham operators at the hub. And that point, they start getting requests from the big emergency operations center. All of this can be happening at one time. And it doesn't all happen at once, but it can be getting planned to deal with your neighbors and your family and to serve the city and the police department and the firefighters. They're not mutually exclusive, but they're very different. The vessel is ready for either mission. So it could be your neighborhood asks the flotilla captain to help bring a family home, or the city needs to bring a firefighter to the island. But having your vessel completely seaworthy 365 days a year, that's a win for the vessel owner as well as your neighbors. So it gives you a goal, gives our boat owners a goal of having the vessel ready 24/7. So when you pull your engine apart, you're motivated to put it back together. We also asked them to take some online courses, incident management training. These are free. It's called ICS 100 and 700, and a ham certification. And that way, when they're on the vessel, they can talk to our EOC and they can talk to the other vessels. So that's the link for communication. And then the real win is that the boat owners are part of our EOC, part of our fuel, part of our credentialing, part of our mission number, liability coverage.
And I know a lot of people have enjoyed the esprit de corps, if you will, that we saw through working with the EOC with the vaccination clinics. And this is a very similar sort of readiness. And it's just a great feeling to be able to help your neighbors and community.
Absolutely. And when I've been getting more response from other communities about trying to start something like this. And, you know, we, as a city, as a Harbormaster, I've been working on this for 20 years, but what really made it start to happen is are the community members, just like the Medical Reserve Corps. For example, Stuart was one of our, a boater, a liveaboard boater that I mentioned, boy, we'd sure love to have you in the flotilla. Then he got his ham license. Then he worked an event during the pandemic, or maybe, yes, during the pandemic. And then it all clicked of how incident management can work for a pandemic, a fire, an earthquake, an oil spill. It's all the same tools. And we are ahead of the game compared to other islands and compared to other cities. But if you knock out 13% of our bridges in Seattle, you're going to see islands, and they are starting to look at the idea of using vessels. So it makes so much sense. We chose Bravo, India as our flag. Hopefully Kingston will choose a Kilo flag, and Vashon will choose a Victor flag. And if all of these communities, especially Kitsap's on board, they're doing great. They're starting to get their flotilla organized. We're all going to be using the same water. So we won't have an empty boat if we're talking to Kitsap or King County or, you know, the other islands. We can really make this work. And it's all small scale, and it's all volunteers. Well, let me see what's in the chat. Was there a question in the chat?
Yeah, Sheila was asking about Bravo,
India. Yeah, Bainbridge is the letter B, Island, letter I. So that's why we chose Bravo, India. Oh, and my graphics got flipped over. Put the red one on top. How embarrassing. I don't know how to fix that, but the red one goes on top. We actually issued these, besides the Burgee, there's a really big flag that has these two. And you just have to memorize it. The idea was taken from the 9/11 boat lift, and that's a great YouTube video. if you have a chance to see it, they just took a spray can and they wrote on a sheet what town they were going to, because it was, they moved a lot of people. We're doing the same thing. We want someone to be able to look out from shore and see a flag that has, they don't even have to know it's BI, but they would see that flag and know that it's coming to Bainbridge. So we're using signal flags for communication. We're using ham radio, and we're using VHF. Let me see, I think, let me get back on the screen. Tammy's such a noob here. The other part that our flotilla can help with is we have places where the radio can't communicate, but it could communicate out to a vessel and back to shore. So if you imagine there's a physical, there's a valley, and the signal won't get over the mountaintop, but it'll get out to a boat and back to another part of the island. So having boats on the water with ham increases our coverage area. Each of these colors would be much bigger if we have boats that can relay information. So we're testing that. We're going to test it more. In 2022, we're going to be part of the Cascadia Rising Earthquake Subduction Zone drill. And you'll be hearing a lot about that in 2022. And the other magic thing that happened on Bainbridge that needs to happen in other towns is having Bainbridge Prepares. You know, the city and the fire department alone would not be able to make this happen. It's because of Bainbridge Prepares and the so many more volunteers that are getting trained in incident command system, and how we fit in with the Map Your Neighborhood, the hubs, the power resiliency, food resiliency. It all fits together, and family reunification. So that's another part that's, it seems like each team helps build the other teams to get there. So my email is in this slide right now. It's tallen@bainbridgewa.gov. Every boater you meet, tell them about the flotilla, find out if they've gotten signed up yet. It can be a small boat on a trailer. It can be a boat that's stored off island. We'll get you to your boat to come help us. So the boat being off island is fine. And then I'm assuming everybody knows about Nixle, but be part of Nixle, that 888-777, so that you're getting notices from us. Once you've got your credential, once you've actually filled out paperwork and got your credential, we'll have you start training with our flotilla captains. And that's Stuart Scadron Waddles that's organizing the trainings. He's wonderful.
Thank you very much for coming by virtually today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Reed. Thanks
And
nice to see you all.